everyone, and welcome to our latest installment of Flipping the Pages. Today, I am beyond thrilled to introduce our local author and illustrator, Nancy Cote. I'm sure many of you are familiar with her work, but if not, she's here to tell us a lot more about herself and what she's doing. So welcome, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm especially in the community that I started out in. We were from Swansea and for many years, and this is by going to the library with my own children at a very young age. We would never leave the library without stacks and stacks of books, and actually that's what got me to start really appreciating and wanting to be part of this whole world. Was through my children and visiting the library. And of course, I also worked at the library for 16 years part-time.
Oh, wow.
Did you even know that, Joselyn?
I heard a little bit of that, but I don't know that I realized that until I got to the Swansea Library. So.
Yeah, that was a big help for me because it exposed me to all of the new books that were always coming in, all of the new children's books. And I was able to firsthand see the very latest and what was happening in children's books and all of the trends. And so it really helped. It was an education in and of itself. So Swansea Library, I am very, very appreciative of it because I really feel like it's led me to this career.
That's wonderful. I love to hear stories about how, for both our users and our employees, how libraries impact and can create such positive change in your life. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it wasn't just, I feel like, yes, I refer to my experience at the library as an education in and of itself, but also it also gave so much to me in the community. The community always fed me friendship and joy, and I loved those 16 part-time years that I was there.
No, that's great.
Thank you.
So nice. So you've already talked a little bit about some of the inspiration behind becoming an author and illustrator. Can you talk more about where that has led you and some of the different things that you've done to get yourself here?
Yeah, I was a painting major in college, and when I graduated, I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to use that degree, but I knew for some reason I was always directed in art. I always felt that was my passion. It's what led me, but I didn't know exactly, like I said, how I was going to use it until we started a family of our own, and then it happened pretty quickly for me. I was so fortunate in this field that is so competitive. I had written a story, so I was actually author-illustrator of my very first book.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I wrote a story about one of my daughters. Well, it was inspired by one of my daughters, and the story was called Palm Trees. I don't have a copy of it right now.
I remember that book, actually. Yeah.
So I was the author-illustrator of that, and so without any background in how to go about getting published, I worked on the story for quite some time, and I actually illustrated the whole thing as well, and I submitted the whole entire package, and I got an immediate response from, it was the Henry Holt Publishing Company. And the editor wrote like maybe a 3-page letter back to me saying how he loved the story idea, but at the time I wrote the story in rhyme, and he asked me if I would even consider writing it in prose, and that's what they would be very interested in.
Oh, wow.
So, of course, I was not a writer. I wouldn't really have called myself a writer back then. I was just learning the writing process, but I thought, wow, I got this response so quickly that maybe I am an amazing writer. So I wrote it all up in prose, and I got rejected. But again, that rejection came with another lengthy letter, And the editor talked about some of the strengths of the writing and some of the things that I might want to revisit. And so I did, and it, like, within the whole course of a whole year, I just kept rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. And then when the story shifted because of the prose, I had to re-illustrate the entire thing as well. So I did the whole package again, and unfortunately it was rejected. Very, very kind rejection, but with, again, suggestions of that the editor might like to see it again if I would continue to work on it. So at that point I was like, oh, maybe faced with the reality that maybe I'm not a great writer, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. But again, I worked on it, and I decided I wasn't going to send back to this particular editor, and I started fresh with Macmillan Publishing. I always aim for the top publishers.
Yeah, no, why not?
Why not?
That's very brave, though.
Yeah, I guess it was, or ignorant. But anyway, so I sent it to Macmillan, and within, I don't remember how long it was probably a matter of 6 weeks or so, and I got a response from the head editor there, and she said they wanted to publish it.
Oh, that's great.
So it was like beyond a dream for that to have happened. And she invited me to come to New York. I went to New York, and she and the art director there took me out for lunch, and we had such a great, really great connection, and they really made me feel so welcome into a field that I was still so new at.
Right.
But it was the best experience that I could have ever had, and gave me the confidence to really feel like I found something that I could be really good at, and continue to keep trying and evolving at. And so I came home, and it just, like, from there on, I just kept getting lots of work. From once that first book was published, I was starting to get invitations from other publishers to illustrate books.
Oh, wow.
And so I kind of lost my, I lost the thought of writing for a while, because I was so involved with the illustration process that I was kind of just like falling into just becoming an illustrator. And I don't mean to say just, but I mean concentrating on becoming an illustrator.
Well, I know that it's much more of a challenge to both write and illustrate your book. I think most picture books have a separate author and illustrator. So for you to take both of those roles on is pretty impressive.
Thank you. But I find that it actually was easier in many ways, because, like, when you're writing, as an illustrator, you may receive a manuscript, and you pretty much cannot really make suggestions as to how you think that manuscript should be a little different. But when you're the author, it's a very organic experience. You can go back into making a few changes in the writing, and then adapting the illustrations to it, and then back and forth. It's so organic and beautiful.
That was a piece I never even thought of, was that you change a piece here, and then you have to go back and rework your image. So.
What I did love, though, about being an illustrator, strictly an illustrator, was because I found that, yes, of course I would never suggest the writer change their words, but it made me, the publishing companies really respect the illustrator enough to say, okay, once this is your vision, they don't ask the writer, is this okay that the illustrator feels this way about illustrating this way? They give you complete 50% credit for your work, and however you envision, that is your vision, and they respect it.
When you were doing illustrations, did you ever meet with did you ever talk to them about what they envisioned, or were you just given, here, go? And
Yeah, everything that I had read about or spoke with other illustrators about, that was the experience. They gave you that free rein, and I think there was only one author that I ended up really communicating with, only as a friendship, in friendship. Her name was Linda Glasser, and I don't know if I have any of her books with me, but The Borrowed Hanukkah Latkes was the very first book that I illustrated of hers. And I don't know, we just developed a friendship that was beautiful, and it was a side. We never spoke of the book other than I would compliment her endlessly on her writing, because I felt she was brilliant and she loved my work as well. So it was just a mutual admiration society, I guess, and a real sincere friendship.
That's great.
So, but no, I love the fact that my vision was my vision, and it just came together very well. And really all it took was reading the manuscript the very first moment. The minute I was reading a manuscript, I would envision all of the illustrations, everything just like, it just was like a dream unfolded in my mind.
So cool.
It was really, it's so exciting to be an illustrator. It really
is. It sounds it. So your first book you authored and illustrated, and then it sounds like you did a bunch of illustration.
Yeah.
What was the next project that you were your own author and illustrator?
I think it was actually this book. It was with the Albert Whitman Company. It was Flip Flops, and it's so cool to be able to write, because you're always drawing from your life as a child, basically, and memories that were really kind of profoundly impacted you in one way or another. And in this little book, Flip Flops, it's about doing the best with any situation that you're given. And I think that when I look back at my entire life, that's always been my personality. To whatever I'm handed, I make the best out of it.
Yeah.
And the story involves a little girl named Penny, and her mom takes the day off from work, even though Penny had planned her whole day out playing with her friends that day. Because it was her mom took the surprise day off and decided to take Penny to the beach. Well, Penny made the best of it, and she went to look for the stuff that she needed to take to the beach, and she could only find one flip-flop. But I mean, in hindsight, it really was the best thing in the world for her, because it made Penny use her imagination and get her through the day in a most wonderful and unexpected way. And there are so many parts to that book that I recall, similarly as a child, and one of them especially when they're riding past, I was from Fall River. That's where I was born and raised, and we would go to Grinnell's Beach sometimes, or head out in that way towards Seconic Point or wherever. And there was this little stand that sold, beach balls and floating devices and towels. I don't know if you remember it, but it was in Tiverton, and I desired every single time we rode past it that the car would pull over, but it never did.
Yeah.
And so I used that exact situation in this story too.
Yeah.
So there's so much that you can draw from as a child that just brings such joy in remembering.
Yeah.
So
I can see it. Yeah. So how long does it take you now to create your work from writing, and which do you start out with? You must start out with writing first?
Yes, I have so many manuscripts that are unfinished, and so many that are at the point that really I could start submitting, and you would not believe. I have this small office at home with where I work on my computer that is just chock full. I mean, the floor is I have manuscripts, like
Wow.
honestly waist high, that really are in the process, I guess I should say. I forget what your question was.
It was, I guess, how long does it take, or
okay. If you're
or
illustrating,
any part of the process, actually, because like when you have your manuscript, do you send it to the publisher, or do you wait until you have your package, as you mentioned with palm trees?
These days, I will just do, I'll really concentrate on having the manuscript as at the most finished level that I can have it, and then I don't illustrate the entire thing, because you never really know, and it could be, a flop in many publishers' eyes, and that's a lot of work to illustrate an entire book. It takes months and months. So now I just do a couple of sample pieces of art in what I'm hoping the main character will look like, the environment, and just a good representation of how I think I would like this book to look like. So, and it often usually includes a cover. I feel that that's like a good way to present a piece, like a manuscript.
All right. So what does your typical day look like when you're for your work?
I think a new development I'm thinking about that I probably should mention, and I think maybe the audience might be interested in, is I used to do everything by hand. I used acrylics. I started with gouache paints, then I went into acrylics, which are really like very, very, very bold colors and that sort of thing. But now I'm working digitally, so I'm not even working like, like with my hands in that way as much. I work on an iPad, and I set everything up in the iPad, and I mean the work is really phenomenal. Sometimes I might still work on handmade pieces, but then I bring them in digitally and like complete them, because you can just one of the things that you have to always be very, very conscious about in a book is leaving enough space for type to be in it.
Yeah.
And so when you may get, sometimes as an artist you get a little carried away with color or placement or composition, and but if you go back in digitally, you can make those adjustments and make sure that there's like a really good white space or a good placement for the text throughout the book. So,
yeah, that's a good point. All the actual layout.
So I'm like, I'm completely consumed from morning to night, actually, thinking of stories, story concepts, whether or not it's something that I'm working on presently or something that I'm just mulling over, or I'm working completely immersed in the art process, or taking on new work. I think you really need to it's a little bit chaotic, because you have to be in a lot of places when you're a freelance person. You always want to be consistently working, so you're always researching what the next job might be, or reading about new publishers or how to submit something, and the field is constantly changing. So you have to really be on top of it. And I think the word evolving is so important in this field, because if you just feel like if you just rely on what you did in the past, you will, and you just cannot continue to stay viable in the field. You have to just keep moving, learning, and finding out what the next thing is that you need to do in order to keep moving forward.
Yeah, that probably applies to all of us at
I
this
think
point,
it probably
right?
does. Yeah. I only just apply it to myself, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
We're moving fast. But with that, on that note, are you worried about some of the technologies that are out there, like AI, with your creative process and some of the impact that's having on authors and creatives in general.
Yeah, I'm just like hearing feedback, like through social media and the contact that I have with other authors or other illustrators, the deep concern about AI. And, I'm just trying to keep a real open mind about it. And I always feel like there's always been big stumbling blocks that, creative people have had in front of them. And I think that if you keep an open mind about AI, I know it's not tremendous, like immediately beginning stages. We're really already getting pretty deep into what AI can do. It's a little confusing, and we're all trying to figure it out. I know that I have plugged in myself. I've tried it. I've plugged in ideas, topics that are pretty impressive, that come back with short stories that are amazing. But I think there is and I guess I can kind of full circle this around. It can come back with very creative responses, but it does not incorporate the experiences that you had personally that go into making something that really connects with someone else.
Right.
Like those little stories that I told about, flip-flops.
Right.
It's like those little things will never be. So, you might be able to use the two. You might be able to use AI in a creative way, not strictly using it, but being inspired by it, or using bits and pieces of it, and still using your own, personal experiences in order to create the perfect book. I think that kids can identify with.
Yeah, no, that's really important to remember, that human connection that is the thing that grabs us to stories. So yeah, I think you hit it on the head.
Thanks.
So what are you working on now? Are you allowed to say?
I actually had received a fellowship through PJ Library, and the fellowship was to go to Israel. But unfortunately, because of everything that's going on, that had to be delayed or canceled. So that was something that I had been thinking a lot about and planning on. And I love being invited by other cultures to do work that I have to research and learn about and deeply immerse myself into to understand. And so PJ Library deals with Jewish children's books. And so I have been very much, over the last number of years, really introducing myself to a lot of Jewish culture. And so a lot of my manuscripts, my latest manuscripts, were involving that culture. And so I know I have a lot of material that I can continue to submit. And I actually did my last book. Well, it's not a book yet, but my last manuscript, book dummy, was called Treetop Shabbat. And I was ready to submit it, and it's actually a board book. And it was so cute. It's about a little family of birds that were ready to, celebrate Shabbat. And I felt like it was so good. And so I was running it by somebody through PJ Library, one of the top managers, and she just wrote a similar story. And and she was, she confided in me to tell me that she wrote the story, and we were like, she was writing it while I was writing mine at the same exact time. And it's unfortunate, because I knew that my book would never get published, because they were already in the process of publishing her book. And it had many differences to it, but it still was the same theme, And she said, "Oh my gosh, Nancy, I wish I could have thought about using that name, Treetop Shabbat, because it was perfect, really, for the
Wow.
the title of that book. So I mean, I don't know if it's a lost cause for me, but we'll see.
How often does that happen? I mean,
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Like you'll get an idea, and if you don't research it out, and if you've worked so far, like I'll work like, for months and months and months on an idea that I get, and then at the end I will check it out to see if it's ever been done, which actually that's the reverse process. You need to almost stay on, like you have to do the research first to make sure that not too much has been done on a particular topic, or that, and I don't mean to say that, it's something that I tried to copy, or most of these things I've never even seen.
Right,
all of these things I've
right.
never even seen until all of a sudden discover that this has been done, and it's really similar to my work. And I mean, it only it reinforces a confidence in me that I feel like, okay, I am working at a level where I'm thinking like, a writer, a well-known writer who has gotten work published, and that's, like, it only reinforces my confidence that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's a highly competitive field, and it's so saturated as well, which is another problem, is why you should do your research beforehand, because it's so saturated. You have to be careful that you're not just duplicating what's out there.
Other than already published works, is there a way to learn that while something is in that production process? Or are there trade journals that you look to, or how do you do that kind of research? This is so fascinating.
Yeah, I really only do the research to see, published books.
Yeah.
Like I'll put in particular topics, and I don't have access to trade journals, but I just look to see what's been published, and then I just keep my fingers crossed that what I'm working on is not going to be being worked on at the same exact moment in time, and that, well, we'll see who's ends up rising to the top. But
this has been so great. I've learned so much.
Oh, thanks. I'm so glad.
Where can we find your work? Or where can we find your artwork? I know you're not just an illustrator, so.
Yeah, these days, thank you for asking that question, because I actually have, over the last couple of years, have been focusing on large-scale paintings again, and I'm getting great success in exhibiting my work. And so I have been shifting a little bit from attempting to get my work published and really focusing on painting. And so, but my mind is always spinning with ideas. I don't think I'll ever stop thinking about like children's picture books, because there's so much satisfaction in all of that, and to be able to create a story that has these endearing characters and that have problems that present themselves in each story, that the character themselves can overcome, is such a beautiful process, and it's a way of life that I guess that I can convey that. I'm sorry.
No, I really appreciate your time today, and it was just a pleasure speaking with you. And you're our first author illustrator that we've had on the show, so we're just thrilled to have you.
Thanks, Joselyn.
Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again.